The insurance and tech sectors are traditionally male-dominated industries, but with cyber risk in particular, to create a diverse experience and understanding of the risk, CyberCube really has focused on diversity and inclusion. But what does this mean? For the ladies who we have on the call today, we're going to be talking about diversity and inclusion and sharing our experiences. I'm Yvette Essen for CyberCube, and joining me is Rebecca Bole. She's Head of Industry Engagement. Also on this call is Judy Chow. Judy is Director of Product Management. And finally, we have Brittany Baker. Brittany is Director of Technical Sales. Brittany, can I start with you? Did you always know that you wanted to work in the tech insurance space?
Can't say that I always knew that I wanted to work in this space. I actually say when people ask me how I ended up here that it was somewhat by accident. I was an economics major in school and I really enjoyed math and technical topics, but I didn't really know what to do with it. All I knew is that I did not want to be a teacher or go and get a master's degree. And so in the US, what you do the year before your senior year of college or the summer is you go look for an internship. And I applied to everything, banking, all sorts of finance places, and finally saw that there was a discussion through the math club that I was not a part of about becoming an actuary. And I went and sat through that, and it actually really intrigued me for a somewhat masochistic reason, which is you have to pass a huge long line of exams. But the pro that I saw was that early in my career, I would be able to kind of steer my own ship. So as you pass exams, you're promoted, you get raises, you get bonuses at the speed at which you go. So there's less of that gray area as a new person starting a new career to say, what value am I adding? How do I move to the next level? It's all laid out very succinctly. And so that's how I ended up becoming an actuary and starting my career in insurance.
And what about you, Judy? Did you fall into it, or did you deliberately plan to come into the sector?
I would say that in my early days, it could have gone either way for me, similarly to Brittany's story, in the sense that I grew up enjoying both humanities, English, and other languages, but I also really enjoyed the math and science disciplines. I would say a defining moment for me was when I got to college and was taking a look around what the different majors and the alternatives were for my concentration. And I really gravitated towards engineering because the innovation really captured my imagination. And so I found myself choosing mechanical engineering as a college major and ended up being one of probably 4 women in my graduating class. And one of the defining moments for me was in our senior year at our university, you need to do a year-long or 2-year-long project that's like a senior thesis or a major hands-on project. And the one that I took on was designing an innovative wheelchair design, which started out on paper, was designed through a computer-aided design program, and then ended up with me spending a lot of time as a small, petite Asian woman in a very large machine shop, working with lathes and drill presses and welders to create a prototype of my wheelchair. The wheelchair had several different pieces of innovation, and it ended up being something that I was able to write a patent application for, and ultimately was awarded an innovation award at the time of graduation. So that was a really defining moment for me because it helped me to see that even in a relatively male-dominated field, I was able to sink my teeth into something that was very significant and that I enjoyed, but also kept one foot in engineering and one foot in how that could be innovation in the business world.
Judy, you mentioned there that it is, in terms of engineering, a very male-dominated field. Brittany, did you find any challenges in the sector?
I'd say in the beginning, maybe the first 5-6 years, I didn't feel anything. I was in a team that was heavily populated by women, actually, at the lower levels, not in management, but there were a lot of women around me, really cool, smart women. And as I said, you're kind of going along based really on merit. And there are strict guidelines that say if you do X, you will be promoted to Y, which was great. And then at the point where I was up for a management position is where I really started to feel it. And in talking to some of my female colleagues who were at the same level, they started expressing the same thing. We all said, we thought we were in this post-feminist utopian group and everything was great. And the same year, we all kind of turned around and looked at each other and went, what's going on? And so that's when I first started to feel a bit different. Items and characteristics that I had that were defined as strengths earlier in my career were now all of a sudden either discounted or spoken about as weaknesses. And it was a really weird transition period to go through. And so that's kind of what I felt was a pretty defining moment in my career thus far, was to see that switch somewhat happen. And it's made me more proactive in talking about it, mentoring younger female colleagues, and really trying to pull them up with me.
We often find as well that having children is another defining moment for women, particularly in their careers. Judy, you have children as well. Would you mind sharing some experiences there? How did you find having children, juggling that with your career?
Absolutely. So I have 2 daughters, and there are a couple of things that, I've really learned growing up as a working mom through my career. I have always been a working mom, although I've taken some time off when my children were born. But as I reflect on this journey, I think that there are 2 things that I find have been really helpful in this journey of being a full-time woman in a relatively demanding field, and also being a full-time mom. One of them that I've really learned and am continuing to learn is just around seasons of investing, I'll call it. And what I mean by that is that, the goal that I have is thriving in the long term, both as a mother and in my career. And that looks different in different seasons of my children's ages and where I'm investing my time. So when my children were first born, I decided to take a little bit of additional time after they were born. So I took 6 months of maternity leave for each of my children before I went back to work full time. And I'm also finding that as they're getting older, the needs of my children are changing. And that needs to just be coordinated across what's happening at work, the choices that I'm making around whether to manage people or to be in strategic individual contributor type roles, and when to step back into a more demanding management role. And those have been trade-offs. They've been intentional decisions that I've had to make. I've been learning along the way how to make the right investments at the right time. I definitely want to be in a place where when I look back at what I've done, I will feel like I don't regret the decisions that I've made for investments in my family, but also that I'm giving it my best in the workplace as well. And then I would say that the second area that's been really useful for my family personally has been in the area of teamwork. We talk a lot about teamwork in the workplace, and I've learned a lot about collaborating and really leaning on teams at work, but the same actually holds true at home. So my husband has been a wonderful life partner in terms of determining when he has flexibility in his schedule and when I can take things on. And it's been a juggling act, but it's also been a great example of teamwork. And now that my children are getting older, we're learning how to empower them with different, I'll say empower them with different chores and responsibilities so that they're learning how to step up and be responsible, because mom and dad are also very busy and they have an important role to play in the family. So I would say that this teamwork, we split up responsibilities around who's doing the dishes. They're helping me around cooking duties. They're helping my husband with various things around the home. And it gives them a sense of a role in the family, an important role that they play. And that's been a really important part of the overall balance in our home.
Judy, you brought up something that I think is really cool that I haven't really heard spoken about at length before, which is previously I've heard people talk about the trade-offs, do I stay in the workforce, do I leave, or do I go for the promotion or stay at a lower level? Whereas you spoke about another type of decision, which is, do I manage people or do I become an individual contributor? And I think that's really cool because you can always be promoted into each of those roles. I think people tend to forget about the higher level strategic individual contributors. And I just really appreciated hearing that part of your decision making.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Brittany. And at least in my experience, what I found is that there are some very important and fulfilling individual contributor roles that are very strategic and continued to move me forward in my career, versus feeling like I needed to step back because somehow I was moving into an individual contributor role. And I think it's important for us as women to think about how we continue to invest in areas for ourselves and also for our families, but in ways that we feel like are, good decisions for that season, and also good decisions that don't put us in a place where, we're trying to sort of dig out of a hole later on. And I think that is possible with creativity and, having a good community of advocates around you. So yeah, that has definitely been my experience, and thanks for bringing that up.
Judy, thank you for sharing that experience. Rebecca, can I spend a bit of time talking to you about diversity and inclusion and what it means for CyberCube? Why are we focusing so much on it at the moment?
So I don't think that this moment in time is particularly different for CyberCube. I think, diversity, equity, and inclusion are really core strands of CyberCube's DNA. Here we're creating the world's leading analytics to quantify cyber risk, and in order to do that, you need to solve some pretty complex problems that are facing society today. So I think we can only be successful with a broad and diverse team that really makes us examine these problems from all possible angles. So having a mix of disciplines, of experience, backgrounds, is really crucial to CyberCube in getting that rounded view. So creating a diverse team, enabling them to do the best work of their careers at CyberCube is not kind of considered by us as just the right thing to do, but also we really believe that such a workforce will kind of have a tangible and positive impact on the commercial success of the company.
So what are we doing specifically then to retain staff and attract staff at a diverse workforce?
Yeah, so saying that, I've talked more broadly about kind of building a diverse team, but there are many facets to the topic of kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it incorporates much more than the gender issue. But we are doing some very specific things around gender diversity within CyberCube. I think notably we've chosen that because we do, as we've noted, operate at the intersection of two notoriously kind of male-dominated industries in technology and in insurance. And we want to ensure that we don't just gravitate towards those industry benchmarks in terms of gender diversity. We really want to lead the way in recruiting and supporting and advancing women to achieve their full potential here. So to that end, we've got a dedicated program of initiatives in progress. And those initiatives have support from across the whole company, from a really great group of our employees from across our various offices and our various functions, through leadership and also through our board of directors. So we're actively seeking the best female candidates for roles across the organization, and in certain functions that's harder than others. So engineering, for example, is kind of tough, you know, and I think it's important to say that your company can't just assume that they will naturally kind of recruit a diverse workforce. You've really got to work at that. So we are putting specific actions in place to seek out those candidates. We're also engaging with industry organizations and charities such as Girls Who Code, who grow and nurture new talent into tech, and also within the insurance sector there are such organizations. So secondly, you know, once we've recruited those that female talent, we're assessing and developing our employee benefits, and we're you know, seeking to create an environment where women really feel empowered to bring their whole selves to work, you know, not feel that they have to hide whatever else is going on in their lives or play a role in order to feel that they play a meaningful part in an organization. And then finally, we want to progress women, you know, to the top tiers of our organization and to have them fulfill their potential, you know, whatever that might be, whether that is within management or as an individual contributor. And, you know, I think it's great that, you know, on this call today, we've got kind of 4 female leaders within CyberCube, you know, just on this one panel, and that's really to be celebrated. And we want to make sure that there are paths there for all of the females within CyberCube to reach their own potential, however that might look for them.
You know, one thing that you said, Rebecca, really struck me around diversity in the workplace, because I feel like, especially at CyberCube, where we're working on some problems that are actually haven't been solved before. There isn't a precedent on how some of these questions are going to be solved. It's really great to look around the table and see quite a diversity of shapes and sizes of people who are bringing in problem-solving skills and perspectives from many different backgrounds. And that those could be backgrounds because of gender differences, but they could also just be the backgrounds of different career experiences that different folks have had, different disciplines that we spent time in. And I really feel like it's the coming together and the meeting of the minds that is going to crack some of the hardest problems facing ourselves and other folks in the ecosystem today. It's not going to be a sort of a one-dimensional perspective that's going to solve these problems. And so I've really appreciated that in the almost 2 years that I've been at CyberCube. And I feel like that's so important in being able to crack the nut on these different problems.
There was a phenomenon in cyber and in the insurance space specifically, maybe not the tech space, that I've heard a few women bring up, whether it's at clients or prospects or just women that I've known kind of in my pre-CyberCube days, where early on, cyber risk was something that didn't get a lot of attention within the insurance companies. It was newer, or even earlier on, it was just this kind of unknown that companies are starting to write and kind of push to the side. And kind of because of that, women started picking up those earlier roles. And now you'll see kind of more broadly than other lines of business and insurance, there are women in charge of cyber specific groups in insurance companies. And so it's kind of that strange phenomenon where it's something that doesn't get attention. So not all of the maybe male colleagues are rushing to do it. And women are picking it up either because they identified early, this is really cool, this is going to be interesting, or it's an open space for me to start making my mark. And so that's why you'll see, even at our clients, a bit more, at least gender diversity in cyber than you see maybe in other groups within those same companies.
Brittany, Judy, Rebecca, thank you very much for your time and sharing your experiences and opinions. For CyberCube, I'm Yvette Essen.